Hello my children, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will discuss the short story, The Little Match Girl, which is written by Hans Christian Andersen. Now from MCQ's perspective, you should know he was a Danish writer. He used to write fairy tales generally, and even The Little Match Girl has some hints of being a fairy tale. His works are not just written for children, even the people from all ages can read it and enjoy it. Now in this short story, he intends to evoke pathos, means he wants to evoke pity in the hearts of the readers. The story showcases the contrast between the rich people and the poor people, that how celebrations and various festivals have different connotations and different meanings for people of different stat. So let's get started with the text. The Little Match Girl, written by Hans Christian Andersen. This was published in the year 1845. Before we begin reading the text, you should know that this story hints at the Victorian era. Now, Victorian era, during that time, industrialization was happening. As we know, if industrialization is there, we require manual labor to run the industries. For that, abuse will happen. Why? Because the more the need of the laborers, the requirement for cheap labor also increases. So in order to get cheap labor, children were used. Children were used to do the work, but they were paid less wages. So children being treated as miniature adults, but for cheap labor. They were not given as much as wages as the elder laborers, because then an excuse was given that children work less. So this led to child abuse. There are many texts written in the same context, like you can read the poetry, The Cry of the Children, which also evokes pathos for the condition of children at that time. Now, this little match girl is also the victim of the same abuse. Because they had to meet the ends, because they were from the poor family, the father forced the girl to do the works. Begging was prohibited, so they could not beg, so they used to do some trivial jobs like selling matchsticks, then cleaning the places, etc. Now let's begin with the text. It was bitterly cold. Now the setting of the scene, this story is very important. Why? Because it foreshadows that what is going to happen next. It is the pathetic fallacy. The figure of speech would be pathetic fallacy, which is somehow showcasing the emotions of the protagonist. It was bitterly cold, snow was falling and darkness was gathering. Now, just like the darkness was gathering in the environment, in the area, the weather was gloomy, similar was the case with the girl. Her life was also gloomy. She was not happy. She was in that, feeling of dejection. For it was the last evening of the old year. It was New Year's Eve. Now Christmas, we could say, is generally the New Year for Christians. Okay, so they were celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. They were celebrating Christmas, their New Year. But someone outside, a small child outside, was suffering. Now understand, this setting is very important. Bitterly cold, snow was falling, darkness was gathering. It is hinting at the condition of the girl. It is hinting at the emotions of the girl and something bad which is going to happen next. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked. Means in that cold and sad nature, the poor girl was walking, bareheaded and barefoot. Now as it is cold, she cannot afford to have anything to cover her head or her feet. She was bareheaded and barefoot, which is hinting at her poverty. Through the streets, she had been wearing slippers. It is true, when she left home. But what good were they? Now this is a rhetorical question, that they were of no good. The slippers that she was wearing when she left the house was of no good. Let's find out why. They had been her mother's, so you can imagine how big they were. Now these slippers were of her mother, so obviously they were not comfortable. They did not give her ease of movement. The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. Now they can ask you, how were the slippers lost? One was lost when she was trying to escape from the two vehicles or carriages that were coming in a very fast speed. And one slipper could not be found, and a boy had run off with the other. So a boy, which is hinting at, cruelty of humans, selfishness of humans towards one another, with the other. So boy ran away with the other. Now let's find out what was the reason. Saying that it would come in handy, come in very handy, this phrase means very convenient. In MCQs they can ask, as a cradle. So he wanted to use as a baby bed for his child, that slipper, someday when he had children of his own. So again, this is also a hint that how poor people were at that time. Also, the girl, she's shown as someone who was alone and defenseless. She could not fight against the boy. So the little girl walked about the street on her naked feet, which were red and blue with the cold. So this is tactile imagery, sense of touch, that her feet were red and blue because of the cold. In her old apron, she carried a great many matchsticks. So she was carrying some matchsticks. As she's a match girl, she's going to sell matchsticks. She had some in the pocket of her apron. She was carrying some matchsticks. Nobody had bought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day. So she had not earned a single penny the entire day. She crept along, shivering and hungry. Now look how this story is evoking pathos, how it is evoking pity in your heart for the condition of the girl. She was shivering, she was hungry, she was feeling cold, she was extreme picture of misery. So you can be asked that, explain that how the girl was a picture of misery, shivering because of the cold. She had not had ample of food to eat. So these all hint that she was completely someone who evoked pity in our hearts. Poor little thing. Now this third person narrative it is, so the writer is giving his own opinions as well. He calls her a poor little thing. The snowflakes fell on her golden hair. So now this can be used, golden hair, for the character sketch of the girl. Snowflakes fell. Now snowflakes were falling on her hair. Beautiful golden locks that she had. Now here snowflakes are symbolic of the trials and tribulations that she's going to face in her life. Trials and tribulations means the troubles, the tests of life that she has to give. Golden hair which curled so prettily about her neck. But she did not think of her appearance now. Now her life had so many things, important things to think about, that she had no time to think about her physical appearance. Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose. Now these lights and this glorious smell of roast goose, this is symbolic of the comfort of the rich which the girl desired. Lights means all that happy things, celebrations. Glorious smell of roast goose means her desire to fill her appetite or have a good food, good amount of food. Also this glorious smell of roast goose is olfactory imagery, olfactory. Why? Because it is focusing on sense of smell. Goose in the street, for this was New Year's Eve, and she could not think of anything else. Now this majestic grandeur, this august kind of atmosphere where everywhere celebration is happening, she could not think of anything except the good smell, the good fragrance of the food. Now she huddled in a heap. Huddled means she arranged herself hurriedly. In a heap means in a pile, in a corner formed by two houses. So you can be asked where she arranged herself in a heap in a corner formed by two houses. One of which projected means one of which was a little ahead, further out into the street than the other. But though she tucked her legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. Now although she was trying to grab herself a little closer to produce a little heat and be a little warm, but it was all in vain. Why? Because she was even feeling cold. Now this colder and colder, this is symbolic of the boring, monotonous poverty and the kind of life that she had, which was never changing. She always faced poverty. She did not dare to go home. Very important. They can ask you what were the reasons that she didn't want to go home. For she had sold no matches and earned not a single penny. Her father would be sure to beat her. Now because of this, the father, because they were poverty stricken, the child was forced to earn for the family. The father would beat her because she had not earned a single penny. And besides, it was so cold at home. Other second reason was that the house was not a cozy place. It was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them, and the wind whistled through it, that even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags, hinting at the girl's poverty. They can ask you, give various reasons or various instances which tell that the girl was poverty stricken. So, bareheaded and barefoot, now they are telling her house was not a cozy place. There were so many cracks, only the roof was above them, but the wind whistling through them, the wind passing and producing that whistling sound could be heard. It was not the house that gave them warmth or protected them from the winter, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags. So they could not even afford to fill all the cracks. Only the largest cracks could be filled by them with straw and rags, means some natural heavy fiber. Her thin hands were numb, almost numb with cold. Her hands were numb with cold. Again, tactile imagery. You can feel that her hands would be, very cold. If only is an expression that I wish she dared pull. Now the writer is saying that he wishes that she dared pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall and warm her fingers. He wishes that the girl should just use one match and just warm herself. Now from here, her hallucinations are going to start. Her visions are going to start, which is adding a hint of fairy tale, that this is away from the reality. She is going to think, or she is going to have those flashes of some wishes, the unfulfilled wishes. Number one, she pulled one out, scratch. So now when she scratches one matchstick, which she sees the first vision. Now scratch is onomatopoeia. How it spluttered and burned. Spluttered and burned means how it produced that confused kind of noise and then it burnt. It had a warm, bright light like a tiny candle. So the matchstick's light is compared to a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. So again, to just feel that warmth, she held her hand over it, which is tactile imagery. But what a strange light! It seemed to the little girl as if she was sitting in front of a great iron stove. This is first hallucination of the girl, children. Number one, you can put great iron stove. So here, great iron stoves become symbolic of warmth, of comfort that the girl desired. All these matchsticks, they are symbolic of the hope that the girl has to fulfill her unfulfilled desires. So the symbolism is very important in the chapter. Iron stove with brass knobs and brass ornaments. The fire burned so beautifully. So she felt that she was sitting in front of an iron stove. It burnt so beautifully and gave out such a lovely warmth. It was giving her a warm feeling. Oh, how wonderful that was. The child had already stretched her feet to warm them. 2. When out went the flame. So it was a small matchstick. It would give warmth for very less time. And then she comes back to the reality from that flash that she had. The stove vanished and there she sat with the burnt match in her hand. So the girl was transported to that world of dreams and she forgets the harsh reality. But now again she's back to the truth of her life. She struck another. Now this is second matchstick that she strikes. It burnt clearly and where the light fell upon the wall. So as she burns it, the light falls on the wall. The bricks became transparent. She felt as if she could see through the wall and the wall had become transparent like gauze. Comparison, so it is a simile again. She could see right into the room. Now she could peep into or see into the room where a shiny white cloth was spread on the table. So now she could see her second hallucination, second flash. She could see a white cloth spread on the table. Food, of course. It was covered with beautiful china. So the beautiful crockery made up of bone china was spread on the table, and in the center of it stood a roast goose. Roast goose, which is symbolic of desire to have food. It is symbolic of hunger that the girl was facing. Stuffed with prunes, so lavish food it was. It was stuffed with prunes, means dried plums, and apples steaming deliciously. So the steaming deliciously is gustatory imagery, sense of taste is targeted. And What was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down from the dish, waddle means walked in short steps across the floor with carving knife and fork. So the carving knife and fork was on its back, on the back of the roast goose, waddled straight up to the poor child. Now, as she was so hungry, she felt that that roast goose had hopped down and it was waddling, taking small steps and coming towards the girl, hinting at her desire to have food to satisfy her hunger. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick cold wall. Now her dream again vanished, so her reality comes back, and there was again thick wall. This was the second hallucination of the girl. Come to the next page now. She struck another match. Now the third match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. Now the next thing that she saw was a Christmas tree. Now these Christmas trees are found where? In areas where there is lot of cold snowfall. So it becomes a symbol of undying life and the stamina to survive in such areas where there is so much cold. So the girl was also in need of such stamina, in need of such zeal to just face and survive through this cold. Also the Christmas tree, it is hinting at, or it is symbolic of celebration which the girl desired in her life but she could not afford. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. Now she had the memory of the Christmas tree is also not from her house ever. The largest one and the one she remembers is from some merchant's house. She has never experienced festivities and celebrations and she longs for them. So she also has that desire for celebration with the family and family time, which is shown here in this third hallucination. 1,000 candles lit up the green branches. So the tree was adorned with beautiful candles on these green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. Now there were balls also. You might have seen a Christmas tree how it is decorated. So some happy or bright colored balls were also put on to just beautify it, and it seemed that these balls were also, and these candles were also looking down on the girl. Because why? Because she could not afford these festivities, she could not afford this lavish kind of celebration. The little girl reached forward with both hands. She wanted to touch the tree. Then out went the match, and then the match was completely burnt out. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air. She felt as if those candles were rising up towards the sky, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. So she could now, when she was seeing upside, she saw that they had become stars. They were shining. One of them fell, streaking the sky with light. Now one of the stars falls down and it has produced that streak of light. Now someone is dying. Now this is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony means we know the girl is going to die of hypothermia, of cold, right? So she's now saying someone is dying and she is only going to die. So this is an example of dramatic irony. Okay, said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. So a superstitious belief is there, alright. The grandmother of the girl who is now dead had told the girl that whenever a star falls down, it hints that a soul from earth is going to ascend to God. So that is why she comments that someone is going to die, but ironically she will die. She struck another match. Now fourth match and the fourth hallucination. Okay, once more there was light in, and in the glow stood her old grandmother. Now she sees her grandmother. Here the hallucination of the grandmother becomes symbolic of desire of love. She had lost anybody in her life who would love her. Father was one who was alive, mother was already dead, father was not loving her, grandmother was also dead, so she longed for love and happiness. So grandmother becomes symbolic, this fourth hallucination. Oh, so bright and shining and looking so gentle, kind and loving. So she looked very bright, very gentle, very kind and loving. For MCQs, this is important. What are the adjectives used? Bright, shining, gentle, kind and loving. Granny, cried the little girl. Oh, take me with you. She tells her grandmother to take her along with her to heaven. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the lovely roast goose, and the great glorious Christmas tree. So, this is showing that the girl has lost hope from life. She knows that these desires might not get fulfilled in this present world. Then she quickly struck all the rest of the matches she had in the packet, for she did so want to keep her grandmother with her. So, in that desperation to have her loved one, her grandmother with her, she just lights up all the matches at once, and she feels that maybe she can keep the vision of her grandmother there for long. So in the MCQs they can ask you that how many matchsticks had the girl burnt. She had burnt several. But with how many matchsticks she had seen hallucinations? With 4. So remember, from MCQ's perspective, each detail is very important. The matches flared up with such a blaze, with such an intense flame, that it was brighter than broad daylight. It was, a comparison is done that it seemed that it was more bright than the broad daylight. And her old grandmother had never seemed so beautiful or so stately before. Now, I said that he writes fairy tales. Now, as a grandmother is no more a human figure, she is a superhuman, or I would say an angel. That is why they are saying she seemed so beautiful or so stately, means she looked so elegant and dignified, which shows her as a angel figure now. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, and they elevate towards the sky. Oh, so high towards the glory and joy. Now they are going towards God, which shows the girl's faith in God, towards glory and joy. It is said when she dies, her life is changing. She's going towards glory and joy. Now they know neither cold nor hunger nor fear, for they were both God. Now, after death, there is going to be no cold, no hunger, no fear, and they will be with God. So it is hinting at the theme of faith and hope. Hope after death. Before death, she had no hope of having good things in life. So, girls, faith and hope is shown in this last paragraph on page 90. But in the cold dawn means in the cold sunrise, next day's sunrise, okay, the next morning, the first day of New Year, in the corner formed by the two houses. Now this New Year becomes symbolic of new beginnings for the girl, fulfillment of the desires of the girl. Sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips. Now when she was alive, she was struggling, she was not happy. Ironically, when she's dead, she's smiling. Dead. She was frozen. She died of her hypothermia, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. So old year was end to her sufferings. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure, on the carelessly arranged figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches and half a packet had been burned. So we know this already. She was evidently trying to warm herself. People now see her, that she's dead, and they say it was clear that she was trying to warm herself. People said. Again, irony. Last day they were ignorant of such a girl outside, and today they are saying that it was clear that she was trying to warm herself. Nobody came out to show compassion or to be a little empathetic towards the girl the previous day. But no one knew what beautiful visions she had seen, and in what a blaze of glory, means what a spark of glory she had entered with her dear old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of a new year. Now, nobody knew that how beautifully she had entered the new year or the new life. Now, in this chapter, remember there are certain things which are very important, like that the power of imagination is highlighted, that how with the power of imagination, we can transcend the reality. how powerful imagination is, then we also have been told that people, there is a message that we people, we celebrate Christianity, we celebrate this Christmas, etc., but we are ignorant of the cardinal principles of that. Like Christmas was being celebrated, Christianity teaches the people to show love, to show faith, to be charitable. But on the contrary, they allowed a girl to die. They were celebrating the birth of Christ, but outside their homes, a girl was allowed to die of cold and hunger. So these things are very important. If we talk about themes, then there is theme of hope, there is contrast between life and death, there is contrast between acceptance and rejection, acceptance from the grandmother and rejection from the father. There is that indifference of the father contrasted with the love that the grandmother had for the girl. Apart from this, the juxtaposition of the life and death, like how life was full of sufferings, how it was miserable, but death, which is otherwise seen as end of life, is very hopeful for the girl. She feels that she's going to have a better life after death. So death becomes ironical in this story. Apart from this, the character sketch of the little match girl should be prepared. You should take care of the themes. You should take care of the juxtaposition or the contrasting ideas, how they are put together, how there is a contrast between the rich and the poor, poverty and the richness of the rich people. These all answers should be prepared beforehand. In this video, I am going to add 10 MCQs for you, and first 5 people who answer this will be named in the next video. 10 MCQs are: number 1, the little girl held a dash of matches in her hand. A box, B packet, C bundle, D pile. Question 2. What was the little girl wearing when she died? A, an old apron, B, her mother's slippers, C, both A and B, D, none of these. Third question, the little girl's hair is described as dash in the story. A long, B curly, C golden, D all of these. Fourth question, where did the little girl huddle down? A, in a nook between 2 houses. In a dark and damp alleyway is option B. C, in an abandoned shack. D, none of these. Fifth question, the savory smell of dash lingered in the air, for it was New Year's Eve. A, roast turkey, B, roast goose, C, roast chicken, D, roast mutton. Sixth question, the New Year's Eve turned out to be dash for the little match girl. A, a joyous celebration with her family. B, a dawn full of hopelessness and rejection. C, a new beginning in the arms of blissful eternity. D, none of these. Seventh question, when the little girl lit the third match, she saw dash. A, her grandmother. B, a large iron stove. C, a steaming roast goose. D, a beautiful Christmas tree. Question number 8. What does the little match girl, having no name attached to her character throughout the story, signify? A, to signify that the anonymity of the poor. B, to signify the society's indifference towards the downtrodden. C, to help the readers understand that this girl could have been anyone in the city. And D, to emphasize the bad state of the poor people. Second last question, how did the girl find out that someone was dying? A, she saw a falling star. B, she heard a shrill scream. C, she smelled gunpowder. D, she overheard people talking. Last question, what is ironic about the revelation from the falling star? A, the superstitions of the little girl's grandmother. B, the little girl being the one who ended up dead. C, the apathy of the crowd that gathered around her, and the terror of the little girl towards her own father. Bye bye, children. See you in the next video.